dad was in the Air Force. He was a career enlisted man, maintenance guy, worked on aircraft, which led to what I ended up doing, but I'm sure we'll get to that. But so we moved around until I was in 6th grade. We were stationed on the island of Guam for 2 years, and then went to California for 2 years. And then when he finally retired, we moved back to Arkansas in Batesville. So Batesville is my hometown. It's what I consider my hometown. I went to school there from 6th grade until I graduated high school. So go Pioneers. My dad was career Air Force mechanic, aircraft mechanic, and electronics. And he would take me out to the airplanes when we were in California and on Guam, sit me in the cockpit, and he'd say, "Son, you want to be an Air Force pilot." You want to be an Air Force pilot. So that was ingrained in my head from a little kid. And I took a little deviation, but got back on track through, and we'll get to that, through help from others that got me back on the right track. But so it was ingrained in me early on that that's what I wanted to do, and I knew that's what I wanted to do. I was in Greece. I was 18 years old, maybe 19. I was there for 2 years, and somewhere in the middle of that, my supervisor comes in one day. It was Athens, Greece, is where I was stationed. It's gone. The base is gone now. It was Helenakon Air Base. But she comes in. Barbara Kay, Staff Sergeant Barbara Kay, came in and said, "Hey, there's a TDY opportunity. That's a temporary duty opportunity in Germany. Does anybody want to go up there for 4 weeks?" I was like, "I'll do it. You know, I'm here in Greece. I'll go travel." So they sent me up to Germany. And while I was there, I did the same job until my last 2 weeks. My last 2 weeks, they assigned me, there was a 2-star general, and for the life of me, I cannot remember his name. And he's the one that kind of got me going this way, because there was a 2-star general who came in, and he was in the hospital for 2 weeks. And they basically assigned me to him and said, "You take care of everything he needs on the medical side." So I was in there every day, talking to him every day. We got to know each other. Wood was his last name. But I can't remember what his first name was. I tried to look him up. I couldn't figure it out. But he sat me down at the end of 2 weeks, and when he was getting discharged, he gave me the "What are you going to do with your life?" speech. He kind of liked me. So I'm like, I love what I'm doing right now. I'm in Athens, Greece. I'm 19 years old. You know, I'm living a dream. And he's like, "But is that what you want to do? Is that what you've always wanted to do?" I said, "Well, you know, I always wanted to be an Air Force pilot," because I told him my dad's story and all that stuff. He goes, "Well, why don't you look into doing that?" And I had no clue, you know, on how, and he's like, "Well, have you ever heard of this thing called AirEvac, air medical evacuation?" I said, "No." And he goes, "Well, you could use your skills as a medical technician, and you go to Scott Air Force Base, and they fly C9s, and it's like a flying ambulance. And then you could get to know pilots and see if you know, might want to figure out how to get there." I'm like, "Oh, okay, that sounds interesting. That's something I'll look into, you know." And it probably went in one ear and out the other. Well, a week later, I go home to Greece and I land, and I'm getting off the airplane, and my supervisor's at the bottom of the stairs, Barb Kay, and she had orders for me to go to AirEvac. So that general had got in touch with the right people and got me orders to AirEvac. I was due to get out of the Air Force on September 23rd, 1985. School, there was a Southern Illinois University, was about 10 miles, 15 miles away. Their school started 24, so I'm trying to get to, I got out the 23rd, school started full-time the 24th. So he said, one day he goes, "Follow me." And we drive up to Southern Illinois. They had an ROTC program, ROTC. We walked in, and Tommy goes, introduces me to the commander of the unit, says he wants to be an Air Force pilot and he wants a full scholarship. And we walked out of there with a full scholarship. And a month later, I get out of the Air Force on September 23rd, and the very next day, classes started full time. And I was in ROTC, and 3.5 years later, I graduated and went to pilot training. Back then, they called us enlisted guys that wanted to be pilots, wannabes. You're a wannabe. And I got to say, at some point, I told some guys, "I'm not a wannabe, I'm a gonna be." And I ended up getting to do it through their help and steering me the right way. So I knew I wanted to go to pilot training. My vision was not 20/20. Back then you had to have 20/20 vision, and it required a waiver, and they hadn't given a waiver in years. And a couple of the enlisted folks, they handle all the paperwork when they're getting your packages together to send it off, and it happens after your sophomore year. They send in your package of what you want to do, and if you get qualified, you can qualify for the job. Well, I wanted to be a pilot, but I didn't qualify medically because of my vision. So I went to see a doctor, and they said, look, there hasn't been a waiver. We wish we could help you. They were very helpful, but it hasn't been a waiver in years. It's just not likely. And I'm like, please just put me in. Please just put me in. And finally, after begging, they put me in. And one day I'm sitting at home, and the commander calls me. He goes, are you sitting down? And he said, you got a waiver, and you're going to pilot training. So what a blessing that was. That was a good day. But the F-15C was strictly air-to-air. So I got to go to that and become, what I thought of as a fighter pilot was all the air-to-air. And in the F-15C, you got a doctorate level degree in air-to-air. I mean, because that's all you did. And you were very, very smart on air-to-air stuff. And then when I went to the F-16, it did both air-to-air and air-to-ground. And you kind of got, where you got a doctorate degree in air-to-air in the F-15, you got 5 or 6 bachelor's degrees in the F-16, because it did so many things that you became, had to be okay at this, okay at this, okay at this, okay at this, but not at the PhD level. And then when I went to the A-10, I got a PhD level in close air support, because that's basically, they called it other things, but that's basically all you did. So, I got 2 PhDs out of it. So, and we were briefing up to go fly BFM. I was the flight lead. He was my wingman that day. We were going to go do 1v1 basic fighter maneuvers, high Gs, go have fun in the F-16. And we get our briefing done. We go to life support, get our gear on, and you would basically go out to the ops desk, put your feet up. There's a TV in the corner, and you kind of just BS for 10 minutes before you get your step brief and walk out. So we're in that phase. Feet are up on the desk, literally, and just BSing, and CNN's on up in the corner. And we see it happening. And we saw the first one happen, and he's an American Airlines guy. And we're like, it's clearing 1 million. What in the world? How did that? And we're like trying to figure that out. And then the next one hit. And I immediately turned to him. I said, sir, we're under attack. And he's like, you're right. So he sounds the horn and gets everybody in command post, and we start trying to figure out what to do. And it's just total chaos across the United States. It's total chaos. We were trying to figure out what to do, what to load the airplanes with. We had to put at least bullets on them. We didn't know what was going to happen. And by that afternoon, before the sun went down, we had missiles and bullets loaded on our aircraft and JR Dallas and configured. Initially, we were going to put our one centerline fuel tank on. And my one input was, hey, we might not have tanker support, so we should probably put 3 bags on to have as much gas as we could, possibly need. And so by that evening, we were setting alert in the cockpit, because at that time we still had no idea. I remember making a frantic phone call to my wife saying, go get the kids. Can't talk about it right now, just go get the kids, bring them home. And of course, chaos was all over the place. But I remember one thing that happened is J.D. Williams called us all in. It was J.D. or Shoemaker, I can't remember which one it was, but brought us in. The guys that were 4 of us that were on alert that night, because now it's dark, you've been up all day, you're exhausted. This all started at 6 o'clock this morning, and now it's 8 o'clock at night, and now you're about ready to go on cockpit alert. And they called us in. They said, hey, you guys have to sign this paperwork. And it's like, what is it? And it was paperwork that said that if given the order, that you would indeed shoot down a airliner filled with Americans. And that was tough.
Was that in a room full of pilots having to do that?
Well, there were 4 of us in that room, and we were all looking at each other like, oh my God, because this could actually happen. And, I signed it. Did I answer it honestly? I don't know. But my thought was, I want to be the person making that decision. I don't want to put it on somebody else. We got the call, and there was an unidentified aircraft. I can't remember what time it was, but it was late at night. Unidentified aircraft. I say late at night. It might have been, 10, 11 o'clock at night. Up in Tulsa, possibly poisoning the water supply. And there was still chaos. This was that night, so we had no earthly idea what was going on. And so we get launched on a scramble order. I don't know where it came from, somewhere on the East Coast, I think. Some command post out there, and we got launched to get to Tulsa as fast as you can and find this airplane that was potentially poisoning the water supply of Tulsa. So we take off, and we're going above the Mach. We're breaking the sound barrier. And the air traffic controller comes on and says, you guys can go as fast as you want, as high as you want, wherever you want, because you're the only aircraft airborne in the United States. So we were like, wow. And we're on our way up there to shoot down an airplane over America. The good news was, it's kind of a funny story, that was a crop duster. And he had no idea 9/11 had even happened. It was not long after 9/11. I think it was the beginning of 2002. We went over to Iraq in support of, I can't remember if it was Southern Watch or Provide Comfort or one of those operations, but we were flying combat missions into Iraq. We did that, I think it was 2002. And then we went back again in the F-16 in 2005 to Balad. Now that was an experience, Balad. That was downtown Baghdad, Iraq, flying combat missions out of there. And we would get mortared every day. I mean, you're just getting mortared. And I remember in our incoming brief, before you start flying missions, you have, okay, this is the base, this is what's going on. It's briefings by all the major players of so you can get orientation. So this lawyer comes in, and he's explaining the rules of engagement. And they're very sophisticated, complicated. You have to take a test every week and study and make sure you're not messing things up, which is a fighter pilot's #1 concern. You don't want to mess up. But he keeps talking about, he gets to a part about the mortars. And he shows a picture of the base, and he shows where the mortars are landing, and they're all over the base everywhere. And he kept saying, as you can see, it's not to be concerned because it's not aimed fire. They're not aiming, because you can see they're all over the place. And I walked up to the picture, and there was a fence in red around and this was the base. There were no bombs outside the base. I said, it is aimed fire. They're aiming at the base, and they're hitting it. So he's like, yeah, I know. So we got mortared every day, and this horn would go off, and you'd either have time to run to the shelter or just dive under you had sandbags all over, and you had body armor. It was 120 degrees in the shade. And pick a career where you wake up every day hoping somebody asks you what you do, as opposed to hoping they don't. That's the #1 thing. Pick something that you're proud about doing, and you hope somebody asks you so you can tell them what you do. I got to do that every day. I was very proud. I'm a very patriotic person, a devout love for my country. And I got to do that, and there was no bigger honor. There is no bigger honor, I don't think. So very, very rewarding, and I loved it every single day I did it. And as far as going into the military, don't accept the answer no until it's absolutely it's the last resort. Don't accept people telling you no, because if I had accepted no, I would have never gone to pilot training. Just keep pressing, set goals, just like you can draw the stairs. This is where I want to go. This is where I'm starting. These are the things that need to be done, and go do them. Because I grew up, after my dad retired from the Air Force, running around barefoot in Bethesda, Arkansas. No way in the world could I have ever imagined that feeling of pulling out on the runway the very first time you're solo in an F-15. And I laughed. I put the brakes on, and I laughed. Because I'm like, they have no earthly idea who they have sitting in this seat, If I can do it, anybody can do it. So don't accept no, set your goals high, and make a plan and do it. Anybody can do it. You can do whatever you want in this country. you can do whatever you want in this country. You set your boundaries. Nobody else does. And if you set them, you'll meet them.